Hi everyone, welcome back to The Learning Gardener. I thought today is a good day to do a end of winter tour of the garden, of the backyard, just so you guys can see where we're at this point, because most of our videos have been about the recovery after the really heavy rains and flood that we had and trying to save the privacy trees. A lot of the other jobs that I have done have been like bits and pieces of larger jobs that wouldn't make very interesting videos, so I thought we could catch you guys up in one large garden tour. So we're going to start here at the deck and work our way down through the backyard, and this is the strawberry bed we worked on clearing out together, and it has got a ton of blooms and tiny strawberries on it, doesn't it, Bird? Our blueberry plants are still looking a bit leafless, but they have bloomed. These ones don't have tons of blooms on it, so I don't know if we'll get heaps of blueberries, but I was surprised by the number that we got last year. And you can see I've started putting up the beginnings of returning the netting to protect it from the birds. I just haven't finished. And we also cleaned out this herb bed together, and I spread some mulch all around here. This is a very, very weedy area, and it's the kind of weed, speaking of, that I have to spray. And because of the rocks, it's a very lizardy area, and once the strawberries start overflowing, the strawberries tend to go into the ground here, so I didn't want to be killing strawberries and trying to work out what was weed and what was strawberry when I really need to be keeping this clear because I don't want snakes in here. So I still haven't mulched it. I will get round to it, but Birdie, please don't eat the blueberries. But yeah, we're getting there. This is the garden bed. We've recently tidied up together, and I do need to get rid of Rafa's squeaky toy, come through and deal with the grass as it's starting to come through the edges of the brick border that we put up, which I knew it would. But the main goal with this one is to extend. How about you take your other squeaky dinosaur that you left in here? Is to actually extend this garden bed here a little bit, both to change the shape and because I always wanted it to be wider. I just never had the time last year to do it. But sorry about the squeaky dinosaur, but we need to put the lower level plants of the garden bed in here, because mostly these plants will get to be about this high. I didn't realize that dinosaur was still squeaking, but we've got some beautiful in bloom snapdragons here, some statice that are absolutely gorgeous. The salvia that we popped in together has held up well, and the lemon that we transplanted, while it has its single lemon on it, is doing well. I popped some, I think they were red Flanders poppies around the base, and they're surviving well. It really does need a good drink of water, but it hasn't really rained in a while. It's supposed to start raining tomorrow, but after all that rain we had, to be honest, it's been a relief that it has stopped raining. Then we're going to come across to the garden beds, and one of the downsides of winter is that the puppies are in the bed a lot more. But you can see in front of you there is a bunch of wood and the other poles for the strawberry bed, but this kind of brings us to what's been happening this winter. Because I knew, if all things went according to plan, that I would be relatively heavily pregnant. Sorry, the dogs are just wrestling in the background, the kookaburras are going off. I would be relatively heavily pregnant in summer, or very pregnant in summer. I wanted to try and use winter to get all the big jobs done. And the problem with that massive amount of rain, we had 12 weeks of endless rain. We flooded, we had unseasonably cold weather in autumn that led to the failure of sowing seeds for the cooler season on 4 or 5 occasions, and the ones that have survived still barely have true leaves and are tiny, and I still haven't planted them in the garden beds. But I was starting to feel really depressed because all I was doing was dealing with the trench, sorry about him, and trying to deal with the absolute bog conditions that came with that, and trying to save the privacy trees. And I was really getting worried that the garden was going to essentially overrun me in summer, and I was not going to be able to deal with any of it. But the last couple of weeks I've been working so hard. My dad's come down to help with a couple of things, and which I will show you, and finally things have started to come together, and I feel like the last of the big projects I wanted to get done in winter was dealing with this wood. I want to make some, like, this is all just recycled wood left over from the building works that we had done, and I feel like I did ask the builder to leave it here, not chuck it out, because I wanted to try and recycle it and maybe make like a tomato support. Sorry if we are slightly disjointed. We have some very excitable puppies this morning. But yeah, I was hoping to make some tomato crates with, maybe not crates, but tomato supports, and maybe some sort of thing to put the wood in or under so that it protects it so it's not getting rained on. But that is yet to be done, and I'm yet to come up with an idea that I like. So we're going to start the garden beds. So if you guys remember, I had some potato slips that just started in the pantry for the sweet potatoes. So I just decided to chuck them in late autumn and see what's happened. They have died off during the cold of the winter just recently. So I thought maybe today I might try and dig them up and see if there's anything there. If there's not, oh well, whatever. Get it ready for the spring and summer plantings. And our broad beans have been growing like mad. They have had a number of aphid problems. They don't look too bad at the moment. Some of them have flopped over. There is a capsicum or two just generally that have survived the winter, but whether anything will come of that, I don't know. So you can see how tall some of these broad beans are. They're all covered in blooms, but actually some of these taller ones really have, sorry about the dogs barking, I've just put mine inside. But the neighbourhood dogs are all out stretching their legs, but some of these taller ones do have quite a lot of aphids on the top, so I will have to deal with them. So I will get some warm soapy water and dump that, oh, that one's gross, that one's covered, dump them all over the tops of those plants to try and kill the aphids before it becomes too crazy. I do also have a seedling tray of Brussels sprouts, which I tend to put in pots and then distribute around the garden and use them as a very effective aphid trap throughout the season. That one is really foul. Oh my god, okay, this end is a lot worse. Oh, we've actually got some beans here too, that's exciting. But I really don't care for Brussels sprouts, and I am allergic to cabbage. So the Brussels sprouts are just doing God's work and getting rid of the aphids. But there are some leftover flowers from the end of last growing season, that I need to get out of here. These beds that we placed not so long ago along this side fence are actually, in theory, in summer, going to be my dahlia alley. I have dug up a few of the dahlias, and I will hopefully separate the ones I have dug up this weekend, but the others I have still left in the beds, mostly because I either can't remember where they are or the soil was too wet to dig them out. But yeah, so we've got aphids to deal with here, possibly some sweet potatoes to dig up here. The other thing we've got to harvest is just here. In this little alley bed, the first thing I planted were those random triplets of fennel that came off the side of last year's fennel that I forgot to harvest in time, and there were 3 little ones and I didn't know if they'd survive, so I just chucked them in and was seeing what happened. But they are absolutely massive. I was going to harvest them last weekend and totally forgot and ran out of time, but they're starting to look a little bit worse for wear, so they absolutely have to come out today. These other ones are ones I planted from seed, I would say late autumn, and they're doing pretty well. They actually look really nice. They're really happy in there, and they're in there with some lemongrass, but they're not ready to harvest. These 3 have to come out, and I don't know what I'm going to do with them, so I might either just dice them up, or I will freeze dry them. If we spin around from the fennel, we've got beds on each side. So I'm gonna do this one first because I am so proud of my beautiful garlic. This is, I think, 4 different types of garlic, and to be honest, I've never, ever had any luck with garlic. I would say on 3 of the 4 occasions I planted it, either nothing came up or a little inch or 2 long spike came up, and then that was it. Mostly I think because I planted them way too late. But this time I actually had my garden in place in autumn, and whereas last year we didn't move here, well, we didn't get the keys till winter, and then I had to set everything up. And yeah, anyway, and then previously anything that had produced any sort of leaf got covered in aphids and got eaten and never actually turned into anything. So I am stoked that these are doing so well. I haven't seen any hardneck scapes. I haven't seen any garlic scapes come up yet, but I don't care. This is so far a success, and I am really happy with it. I actually need to water and fertilize them today. I think they've dried out a bit, but super happy with them, and like really hopeful. So given how woeful our cool season crops have been, our beans look very impressive, especially the broad beans, but really they're the only thing I've been able to get going this winter, both because of the rain and because of the unseasonably cool weather. So I'm so happy with this. Like, at least we got something for all that work. This is our very sad little Kennebec potato bed, and these were looking beautiful, but now they've had some slug damage, so they're not looking so beautiful anymore. And that's just something that's happened because of the rain. Last year we had very little slug pressure, whereas this winter, because we had over 2 meters of rain in 9 weeks, we've had a lot of slugs. So the nasturtiums are doing beautifully, and they've been cut back multiple times. But the Kennebec potatoes, they took forever to come up. The trouble is I really can't bait for slugs because I have puppies, and I have curious puppies that like to play in the garden beds and that like to eat the blood and bone when I put it in the garden bed and like to taste the fertilizer. And so even when you buy a slug and bug killer that is dog safe, I just don't believe it. Like, we spent $2,000 taking Rafa to the vet recently because he was so unwell and he had to go to emergency, and then before that he sliced his leg open, so that was a lot of money too. So I don't ever want to go to the vet again. But the Kennebecs, back to the point of the video, the Kennebecs have been woeful. They were so slow to emerge. I did plant them before all the rains started, which is unfortunate. I was worried I wasn't going to get any potatoes because they would all rot. Even though the whole point of the raised garden beds is that when we have these huge deluges, that they drain out better. Still, the soil was so wet. We had so much rain. So we've got 3 plants, which is pretty disappointing. So I would be very surprised if we get much of a harvest of Kennebecs. What can you do? Sorry, I'm concerned this video is going to be a little bit bitsy. We just had to stop because the neighbour's worker was working right up against the fence. Anyway, we'll carry on. So we've got some more garlic here. These couple just down here are elephant garlics, but the pyrethrum is doing so well, and the flowers are so beautiful. And one of the things I eventually want to do with this is make my own pyrethrum spray. This is one of the plants I was very adamant about getting in early. If you watched the when we cleaned out that garden bed together recently, I ummed and ahed about pulling out a tansy plant that had turned into cousin it last year. But the reason why I planted plants like tansy and pyrethrum around the garden and generally on the corners of the garden bed is because that's more likely where the puppies are going to brush up against, and this is a very tick heavy area, very tick heavy. and I want to try and minimize that with whatever natural plants I can, like rosemary and lavender, which was why I had tried to plant some of those in this side alley as we go through the garden, which I'll show you in a minute. But the idea was to create natural repellents in the garden, and this one has just been beautiful since day one, so I'm really happy with that. Really happy with the garlic. You can see I'm all set up and ready for my potatoes, which is great. And we've got something else beautiful down the end of the bed, which I will show you. So down this end last year I planted, I'm pretty sure they are Californian Alba yellow poppies, and they were pretty underwhelming last year. They didn't really do anything, and they didn't really create much in the way of flowers, so I'm surprised to see them so thick and so beautiful. There's a tag there, let's see. Oh, apparently there's 2 slugs, and there was a cafe au lait dahlia here at some point. But anyway, this has come back so thick and so beautiful, and we've just got our first bloom, and it is absolutely stunning, and I am very excited to see this with full blooms. And I don't mind if it takes over a huge chunk of the garden bed with the poppies. I just love poppies. My mum loves poppies, so if they want to take over, please go right ahead. Oh, the other thing I forgot to show you is we've got more slugs, but also where did it go? A tiny little stray self-seeded carrot down here. I don't know how it got down here. We didn't have any carrots nearby that I remember last season, but it's there, and we'll give it to the pups when the time comes, because theoretically I'm not supposed to be eating carrots. So then we get to our alley, and this is one of the jobs I didn't film because I didn't think it would be very interesting. Oh, all my seedlings have died. Anyway, as you can see, I haven't been out here for a few days, and I'm finding things with you guys. But this area was like a floodway when the rain was coming, because it's slightly lower because it gets a lot of foot traffic, and we just had tons of water gushing down through here, down the back. It's also the puppies' main alley, so the grass just got completely ripped up. Where the camera is now on the grass, they've been ripping the grass up in the last few days, wrestling with Clancy when he came over. So I ordered a ton of mulch, and I have spread it 99% of the places it needs to go, and I'll show you some of the ones that haven't had it. But if you remember last year along here, I had lavenders, I had rosemary, and I had bunny tails. The bunny tails have self-seeded and come back, which is fine, and most of the lavenders died with the sogginess of the soil, and the same goes for the rosemary. Again, they were for tick prevention, but we're gonna have to plant something else. The seedlings that I said had died were what are they called? Sweet peas, and they're one of the ones that got planted in autumn and then got drowned multiple times. So we do have salvias here at the front. Whether they'll come back, whether they got drowned, I don't know. But we've got the Nema climbing roses on the front and back archway, and they've done beautifully. All winter they've kept growing. All winter they've had on blooms, so I'm loving them, and they're starting to get even more leaf on them, which is great. So hopefully this should be beautiful in summer, although I do need to keep on top of keeping these guys pinned back. To the number of times my dad and I have got snagged on these is unreal. As you can see beside me, this bed is mostly broad beans on steroids. There looks like there's a silver beet that's looking a bit rough in there, and a few beets that probably won't do much because they're not getting any sun. And this garden really doesn't get a lot of sun in winter anyway. But we have, I believe these ones are Green Feast shelling peas, yes. And then we've got some Moulin Rouge beets, which again, I don't know if they will be getting enough sun to actually bulk up. We have some thyme down the back here doing beautifully, but the beans have finally started to take off, and we've got some parsley from last year that needs a pretty serious haircut. Once these beans are done, and I tend to find in spring, oh, these ones have already got a fungal issue on them. I'm going to pull them off so they don't spread too far. I tend to find we get fungal issues very quickly, and the plants tend to burn out fairly quickly. They've done well in winter. I planted tons of them, The green feast didn't do as well as the sugar snaps, but I still think I probably need to plan to plant more because none have made it inside. We just eat them outside. My friends' kids come over and they're straight to the beans. I go out, I'm straight to the beans. We all love the fresh beans and peas. They are so good. Oh, so good. But the plan is to move this towards that edge of the bed for tomatoes in summer, so I can have more planting space rather than have them in the middle of the bed, because that kind of shaded too much stuff out last year, and technically I had planting space but I couldn't use it. One of the downers is that this is a bed that I have stacked up with the homegrown compost, and as much as the plants love the homegrown compost, there's always grass that's emerging, which is annoying, but at least it's, I guess, free soil for the garden beds. And as you can see, these guys very happy. So this bed has recently had a little bit of work done on it and a bit of junk put around it. I'll show you guys the area behind the camera in a second, but you'll remember, and if I can find some footage I will show you, it was a mess. So it was the area where, because this house doesn't have a lot of storage and a very small garage, when I moved in, the removalists just kind of dumped a whole bunch of stuff out here. And at the previous house, we had a very short fence, and I had to, what I call bird-proof it. I had to put up stakes with chicken wire so she couldn't jump the fence, and they dumped all of that there. And all of these pots, and as you can see, they've all got weeded and they all need to be emptied out. But there's only so much I can fit in the garbage bin in one go. Yeah, so they're just there waiting for the garbage bin to be emptied this morning, and then some of it will get dumped in, and then it'll take a few weeks, we'll get rid of it. But that area was a mess, and I've slowly been working on cleaning it out and doing multiple tip runs and things like that. But again, that's not a very interesting video because it was done over the course of weeks, and yeah, so I'll show you the almost finished result in a second. But this bed has been just sitting here, and I should have planted something in it, but as I said, I couldn't get any of my seedlings to start. In the end, I bought a light kit from Temu with a seed starting tray to see if they worked, and they did work, but I found they got leggy quite quickly, so they're now all sitting out on the deck, but at least they germinated, so that was exciting. So last weekend I put a bunch of different types of beet seeds here. I put a bunch of different types of radish seeds here, and they've all emerged, good old radishes. And I put some nursery bought broccoli in here. Now I know we've got 1 week left of winter. It is probably too late for anything to be achieved other than me killing this slug beet-wise. And I know these broccoli won't probably do much. I know they might bolt and I might not get broccoli this season. But you should see the broccoli on the deck. This broccoli finally emerged in late autumn, and I think it has 4 leaves on it. This whole winter, that's all it's been able to achieve, and it's been in the sun the whole time. But it is what it is. I really wanted to get broccoli because I really wanted to be able to, number one, I loved the homegrown broccoli that we grew last year. It was sensational. But I wanted to be able to make a whole bunch of baby food, freeze dry some of it. I wanted to be able to be ready for life as a single mum. But we might not do that with broccoli. We might not be able to do that with our cool season crops. Yeah, so I haven't even been able to get any spinach going, anything. So I'm still trying. We'll get what we can, and we'll see how we go. So I've just swung the camera directly around from where we were, and I'll show you a few different views. This was the dumping ground, and I've been working on turning it into a garden bed. I have brought down some bricks. I've got to bring down some more, and some mulch, but I've got to bring down some more. This was a very weedy area, so I did my best to cover it in cardboard and newspaper, what I had. These are our 2 apples. This is the one we recently put in that Birdie gave a little bit of a chomp to, but the lavender around them are quite happy. So we shall see. So the reason they're placed where they are is because that is where the flat land was. This area was where a massive tree was when we first moved in that was full of white ants and was overhanging the house and the deck. So there's still some like root matter here that hasn't rotted away, and that makes it a little bit hard to get a large pot and get it still and stable. But I haven't, hopefully you can see this because I can't see the screen of the camera. I have created a little gully down the side here, and I haven't mulched any of that in or done anything with it yet because this is a track down the side that will then head into the trench that we spent a few videos and numerous weeks creating together. One of the reasons why I didn't finish this off is because I have got a snowball viburnum just here that I want to maybe move a bit more this way or move a bit more away from the fence, but I haven't actually decided yet whether I will do that because there's cardboard here, and the cardboard does take a number of months to break down, so I would have to mound it up, and it seems happy enough there, so maybe I'll just leave it there and prune around it. But you'll see in a minute that it is at the beginning of the line of the trees that we bermed up to try and save them from being waterlogged. So just a slightly different view. This is the trolley that I'll be bringing the bricks down with, but I wanted to make sure that this area stayed wide enough that I could get any machinery that needed to come down the backyard through quite happily. This is all again waiting for the garbage bin, and then that orange tree that we planted up in the container video together, I planted a whole bunch of poppy seeds from the garden that I saved from last year, and I can't remember if they are a red ladybird or a black pearl variety, but they have germinated beautifully. So just like the other side, the aim of the game is to keep this area wide. As I said before, these pots will gradually get put out and into the bin, and this is where our trench starts. And I was sick of doing trench videos, and I'm sure you guys are sick of seeing trench videos, so I didn't show you guys that my dad and I went and got a whole bunch of free river rock, and we brought it back and filled the trenches. And I was really lucky because, to be honest, my dad did most of that. I started feeling sick part of the way through digging up that river rock. I think that's just too much to do while pregnant, and my belly started hurting. My poor dad's in his mid-70s, but on he went and did the job. And then we had someone come and help him put up the garden shed, which I will show you later, and deal with the concrete, and he also helped lay the river rock, and then I've mulched over it because this area was just a mud heap, and I am sick of dealing with mud on the curtains and on the walls and on the carpets and on everything. We got so much mud inside. Even though I clean it every time I see it before I put the mulch down, the level of muddiness that the dogs are bringing in every time they peed was unreal. And then this is the nearly finished product of the work we've been doing. So the trees are mostly looking pretty good. Some of them are leaning a bit because we've had some horrendous winds, but I'm not going to deal with that for a while because when we shift from winter to spring, we get horrendous wind. So for now, they can just stay like that, and I'm going to worry about shaping them up and dealing with them later. But the berms are holding steady so far. The, what's it called? Lamium that I transplanted is doing really well. The Forsythia Linwood Gold that I dug up and moved is really happy and doing well, and so is the other snowball viburnum. I think they'll do well having a little bit more space, but it's nice to have this area just tidied up. And I did put a brick barrier on here. I don't know if I'll keep this area mulched long term, but I just couldn't handle the mud and the weeds and everything. There are a few patches where I haven't finished the mulch down here, and that's just because there are chunks of soil still, topsoil that is full of glass and everything that needs to go in the garbage bin. And as I said before, it weighs a lot. There's only so much you can put in the garbage bin each week. So that's a bit by bit process. So we're going to start going through the beds a little faster because there's beans, more beans, more beans, and then some more beans. The only thing that is totally amazing and different is these artichokes. They were tiny and weedy for ages. They were absolutely doing nothing. And then I put the smallest amount of home compost on them and they went boom. And they've been pretty happy all winter, so it'll be interesting to see if we get some beautiful blooms from this. I have never eaten an artichoke before. I may or may not try it, but really more I'm growing these for the beautiful flowers. Speaking of beans, I just saw some good ones. Some of them are starting to get a little bit fungally, and this can be my breakfast. So good. So as part of the magical bean tour, this is our sugar snap peas that have done so well that the kids run to immediately every time because they are just so tasty. This bed, as you can see, needs some work. It's been abandoned. These are leftover tomatoes from last season, and I've just left it to its own devices. It was a low priority. But this is the other side of that bean trellis. It does not look as beautiful as the other side, and every time we get some heavy winds, this thing falls over, and some of that is because these Birdie's raised garden beds are only 35 centimeters deep, and these ones I used a hugelkultur method to fill them so they're not full dirt, so the stakes are not as stable, but they're definitely starting to get taken over by a fungal disease, so I really need to harvest these and, let's be real, eat all the beans, or try and maybe freeze some or freeze dry some. The other thing on the other side of Beantown that we have that I'm in love with are these beautiful yellow poppies. These bloomed in June, smack bang in the middle of our winter, and they have been blooming ever since, and the bees go crazy for them. They're so beautiful. Again, if this wants to take over a huge space in the garden bed, I am all for it. Once again, nasturtiums are doing beautifully, but these are our Pontiac red potatoes, another potato type I have never grown before, and you can see that they are actually doing really well. They've held up quite well to the rain and the amount of moisture we had. I think we lost a few, but let me show you who didn't like the rain. This is what's left of the Nicola potatoes that we planted from last year's harvest and that were looking beautiful. They got mauled by slugs and I reckon they all rotted. So I don't actually know if there's any potatoes in there. Again, along with the, oh, there is one, a mini tiny little one. Along with the sweet potatoes, I will try and dig this one up this weekend and at least get this bed ready for warmer season crops. Hey Beth, what do you think? Good idea. Our beautiful container that we planted up together recently is doing really well. The poppies have settled in. The snapdragons are starting to wake up. The billy buttons have held on, although this one looks a little bit sad, but it's coming along nicely, filling in nicely. We've also got some aqualigias or columbines and a salvia in here, and we've got a few, I can't remember if they're violas or pansies in here. I think they're pansies, but hopefully this will flush up as the weather warms up. Yesterday was quite warm, and apparently we're having 27 degrees in a few days, so that's a bit crazy and out of nowhere. That's like late spring temperatures. So hopefully nothing bolts and it just grows beautifully, but it's looking pretty great. We spent ages together in this bed. Yes, we did, Rafi, we did. And we put a whole bunch of store-bought onion seedlings in this bed, painstakingly laid them out, did the same thing with some red ones and some brown ones in this bed. And I mean, to be fair, this is dry as a bone, but Birdie dug some of them out, and then the next day, because I'd put heaps of homegrown compost on here that had a lot of composting worms in it, we had, I assume, a bandicoot come through and go digging for worms, and these are the onions that survived. So if we get any onions at all this year, I will be amazed, because our onion seedlings just do not want to start. I started my 6th or 7th packet of brown onions in those Temu light growing kits, and the brown ones will not germinate. The red ones germinated, but the brown ones just don't want to be part of our lives this summer. So, you know, what can you do? The really cool thing that has seemingly survived quite happily in this garden bed is the Mary Washington asparagus. I have never eaten asparagus, never grown asparagus, never asparagused anything before. And you can see we've got a surviving capsicum. But the other day I was in the backyard with Rachel, and there's another one coming through, and she turned around and said, oh, when did your asparagus come up? And I was like, it's up. And we had this stalk that was about this tall and really quite thick. And so both of us just snapped it off and ate it raw, and it was really quite nice. So I'm excited because this is the first year that we'll be able to harvest the asparagus. My understanding is that when you harvest it the first year, you can only harvest about 30% of it, and then gradually you can increase the amount you harvest each year. But obviously you need to leave some behind to have little solar panels for the plants so that it blooms again next year. And this bed, as I said, these side beds along the fences are going to be flower beds. This has got some lamb's ear, which I just basically put here to help it survive the winter instead of in a seedling tray. And we've got one bell of Ireland that survived, and a couple of poppies. So nothing really to see here, and we are running out of camera battery, which is why I'm trying to move a little bit faster, even though in theory the camera battery was fully charged. Hey bird, you here to destroy some more stuff in the garden? Oh, that's my puppies. What would it be if they weren't here to destroy something or eat the microphone? There's not a whole heap else to show you over here. I haven't done anything with this bed. This is one of the other hugelkultur beds that we put together. The blackberries are as they were when we strung them up, when they started embedding themselves into the ground. The roses are starting to emerge from the ground. The nectarine had already bloomed, and those blooms seem to have wrapped up so far. We've got bluebells emerging, foxgloves doing well, and the snowdrops have also emerged and bloomed and are looking fantastic. But over here is much the same as it was before. The only thing that's going to change is this ornamental pear tree. So you can't really see it in amongst the mulch, but say goodbye to it because it's going, because the water, stormwater is nearby. And despite all the research I did on their root varieties, I went and had a little dig around at my parents' house to have a look at theirs, which was supposed to be much smaller than they turned out to be. And those roots are terrible, so these are coming out. On the other side of the garden, we've got some pineapples that are struggling to make it through life, because this is a very shady area, it turns out, in winter. A whole bunch of nothing. Some strawberries we transplanted when we cleaned out the other bed, and the fairly rough looking blueberries from the other bed that we transplanted to give them some more space. And the other strawberry blueberry bed is doing a lot better, and again there's a whole lot of nothing happening in this bed. Where there is something happening is the yellow raspberries. Now I would think this season's the one we're actually going to get something from them. However, you can see how many suckers this thing has put through. These are just some of the ones I have already pulled up. As long as the suckers stay in here, I'm fine. But last week I found 2 down here. And this has weed mat underneath it, and that to me means that the raspberry has escaped the weed mat, which means, I don't know. I was thinking I'm going to immediately rip this out because I don't want to be dealing with raspberries in the garden forever and ever. I don't know what you guys think. Let me know. If you think now's the time, get rid of it quickly, then for sure that's what I'm going to do. The other thing I was thinking is maybe I dig that up, or one of the suckers up, and put it in a container with a base on it so it can't sucker into the ground anywhere, just so I can taste what yellow raspberries are like, because I do not like red raspberries. They're way too tart for me. But yeah, this is a problem. So let me know what you think I should do. Down the back, we still have chaos. We have the end of the trench that I got as far as the tree root and then stopped. And we have all the bricks and tiles and everything that I dug up from here to create the orchard. And what I want to do with all of these is use them and recycle them to pave the courtyard area, which is currently totally trashed, that we cleaned up once together. But the biggest thing that was achieved this winter is the garden shed. This has meant that now I could clean out the garage, and that has meant that now my car is only just able to fit into the garage. There's 15 centimeters on either end of the car, so it can just get in. But I couldn't open the car door fully, and I really couldn't use the other side of the garage because there was just so much stuff jammed in there. And I do still have to bring things down like the mower and stuff like that, but the garage is cleaned and organized and sorted, and you can see I've brought a lot of stuff down here that I haven't actually got as far as putting in yet. There's still a couple of holes in the roof and things like that that I need to silicone up before I bring the mower down, and other things that are a bit more water sensitive. But this is like life-changing, and I know it's not the prettiest shed, and it's a bit of an unorthodox shape because we did some freestyling with it, but it was a free shed in that we didn't pay anything for the shed, but obviously we had to buy the concrete to make the base. But my dad works at a hardware store and was able to keep his eye out for broken bags, and so we got most of the bags for $1 each. But so this is a recycled shed that is going to add so much function. We do still have some panels of shed left, and some of the things that I want to do with that is maybe use some of that wood I showed you earlier that the builders had left behind for me to use, and maybe use that and the leftover shed panels to create like a wood barn type thing to help keep water off the wood, but still allow airflow to help it dry and be good firewood in winter. We're basically at the point where it's warm enough now that we almost don't need a fire at night, which is nice because we had to burn a lot of wood this season because it got so cold so early this year. But yeah, we're getting there, and this area obviously still needs a lot of work. But in terms of the main big jobs I wanted to get done before my belly gets too huge, this was one of them. The mulching the pathways was another one. The clearing out that mess patch and turning it into a garden bed was another one. I've still got to finish cleaning the deck. Cleaning the garage was a big goal, and last night I also painted the skirtings that need to go on where the hard flooring was placed, which yeah, it's been a while, but I'm not in any real hurry for the skirtings to go on. So then inside is more organized. There's still a couple of internal doors I need to paint. The skirtings where all the carpeted areas are, all the door frames and all the window frames that I need to paint, but that's not going to happen anytime soon. So I feel a lot better that the main jobs I wanted to get done are in fact now done. So that is very exciting. And I mean, the pavers obviously need to be moved, but I'm not as worried about them as like a snake pit, or no more worried about them as a snake pit as I am about the wood, and there's nothing I can do about that. If you're going to have a fire and burn things in winter to keep warm, you're going to have a pile of wood, and if you live in Australia, there's a chance that there will be a snake in there. That's just the way it goes. And yeah, hopefully that doesn't happen, and hopefully we don't have a bad tick season, because this season we haven't sprayed for ticks in early spring. Obviously it's also not early spring yet, but I'm not going to be spraying for ticks because we've got too many garden beds and fruit plants and a dog hitting me in the butt with a stick. But yeah, I don't want to spray. There's too much, and also the areas they'd be able to spray are so limited now that it wouldn't be worth it. So hopefully things like our pyrethrum and our rosemary and our lavender do the job and get things done. So anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this end of winter tour. I know there's a lot of empty beds, but when your seedlings don't germinate, there's really nothing I can do about that. And hopefully with the warmer days coming, things will start growing a little bit faster. Hopefully we can get some broccoli. Hopefully we can get some onions going, and hopefully we can have an abundant crop this summer, which is going to be very exciting. So there's lots happening, and hopefully the videos will start to get a little bit more interesting because they're no longer about trenches and flood control and moving trees, and more about getting the garden beds ready for spring, getting them all planted up, and doing a lot of weeding. There's a lot of weeding that needs to be done. I have been using a bit more vinegar spray, but it has clogged up a few spray guns, so I'm going to have to work out what I'm doing wrong. Anyway, this is the Learning Gardener. It's all about learning. So we make lots of mistakes here and we work it out as we go along. So please let me know your opinion about the raspberry. If you've made it this far into the video, I really appreciate you guys hanging out with us. And hopefully we will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.